Have you ever read somebody's bio and you just knew you would instantly click because there's so much synergy and alignment in your mission and message in the world? And with Stefanie Gass on the Rainmaker family show for our guest, that was exactly how Stephen and I felt when reading her bio. Because Stephanie is really all about partnering with God to create income and impact without sacrificing your family, faith, or buying into the social media hustle, which Stephen and I are all about. Not only that, but Stephanie is a business and podcasting coach who is all about creating boundaries in your life. She's a seven-figure CEO and she helps women grow their online business and make consistent income while using podcasting.
One thing Stephanie's really known for is getting you really clarity on your calling. So this episode, we really want to dig into that. Like, what is a calling? How do you go through a process of getting clarity on it so you can have momentum and know you're going the right direction? All right. Welcome to the show, Stefanie Gass.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Now, you guys heard in that intro, like Stefanie is quite the highlight reel of all the things that she's been up to and all the impact she's been making. But Stefanie, we love hearing like the journey. We love hearing the journey. And today, what we're really talking about is something that I feel like is a deeper thing. I think it's honestly a longing in people to really have clarity of where they're going, right? Like, what is it that I'm putting my hand to? What is it that I'm really pioneering? And I honestly feel like we kind of intersect with people a lot of times in the in between. We call this kind of the abyss season, right? Or like you're out in the ocean, you're just like kind of paddling around, you're not sure like direction. Take us back to like maybe in your story when you really shifted from, kind of being in that season of not sure to really finding this calling.
Yeah, for sure. So that moment really came on the tail end of a business failure. So I have been a full-time entrepreneur now for 14 years and I had about a decade of searching. And I think anybody who's trying to start their own business can attest probably a very similar story. So I actually got started in network marketing. It was before it was shiny and cool and had a lot of success in network marketing. I was a top 1% producer and it was to the absolute detriment of every other area of my life. And it's not network marketing's fault. It's the fact that, I think so often our gifts, our giftings can also be the things that we can idolize, right? Because they make us feel so great to be operating in our giftings. And so I was leading people and I was having success and I was speaking and like all these things that eventually I was going to move into, but I was doing them for Stephanie instead of for the people I was called to help. So inevitably what happens is for me, my faith is a really extremely important piece of my life now. But back then it really wasn't. So I was completely separating my faith from my business. And so I would just work and work and work and work and work. And what ultimately ended up happening is that I was having these massive panic attacks. I was completely drained and burnt out. I was drinking too much. I was completely lost. And I had made it. Well, at this moment of making it, I felt absolutely nothing shift inside myself. I was still the same broken person. And so I started to ask God because I knew that there was more. There was more that I was missing. Why did I feel this way if I was having success? And I was a Christian, but I was not in true relationship with him. And so I started to kind of search and ask these questions like, Lord, is there more for me here? Like, am I doing this wrong? Like, I just started to open my heart to even connecting the dots between kingdom business and Stephanie's business over here. Well, anyways, God is so faithful. And sometimes he just rips the rug out from underneath you. And that's exactly what happened. So in 2016, my business crumbled. I went from top 1% to like we were making a quarter of the income we had been making. And I had a newborn. I had a 2.5-year-old. I was 60 pounds overweight, completely lost in my identity and panicking. How am I going to make money? My husband had to sell his Harley Davidson to pay the bills. Like it was a real dark moment in my life. And sometimes that darkness is where we can finally be reborn, which is exactly what happened. So I ultimately started doing what we all do as entrepreneurs when we're like, oh no, everything fell apart. We panic and throw spaghetti at the wall. So I'm like, do I go back to work? Do I start network marketing again? So I started doing everything. I'm blogging about how to style your mantle. And if you know me, I'm like the absolute worst person to interior decorate. Like, what am I doing? I'm creating blogs about I'm like panicking. I'm doing anything. I start an Amazon merch t-shirt store. Okay.
Nice.
Again, worst chick to be designing t-shirts. They are so
Yeah.
ugly, I swear. And my friend looks me in the face one day and she says, sit down. And I sit down and she says, get back to the thing you're called to do. And this light bulb goes off in my head. And I'm like, called to do? What does that mean? And I started searching and praying because at this point I'm like really trying to lean into this relationship with Christ. Like, tell me what I'm supposed to do. And I'm like, I'm at the end of myself. There's nothing left. I can't lean on myself anymore. There's nowhere else to go but him. And I start to pray and I start to hear like now what I know is Holy Spirit really leading me. And I get a notebook and pen, you guys, and I start writing. And it was Holy Spirit just helping me understand what I was called to do. And on this paper, I'm writing down, I'm sober. I'm connected with God. I'm the daughter of a king. I'm leading women. I'm helping them grow their businesses. I'm a present wife. I'm a present mom. Like my body is healthy. I'm writing all of these things on this sheet of paper completely from a broken place. And I stop writing and I look at the paper and I'm like, must be nice to be her. Like, who is that? And I just heard this whisper, like, that's who you're becoming. That's your calling to become her. That's the call. It wasn't one thing. It was this beautiful vision of what was possible for my life. And so I circled the first thing that was to get healthy. And I went and joined a gym I couldn't afford. I put my babies in the daycare for 2 hours. And I opened this thing called the Bible that I had never really dug into before and tried to figure that out, tried to learn how to pray, and spent the other hour working on growing a business, which wasn't really clear, but I knew that it was part of the calling. Started going lives on Facebook, started doing some things there. And the craziest thing about that is that was 6 short years ago. I'm literally the woman on the paper today. Everything has become truth. And so I share kind of all of that background to say calling is bigger than one sentence. It's bigger than one thing. It's a culmination of what's possible in all areas of your life. And that's why it's so big and scary and so hard to get to. And it takes so much surrender to allow that vision in and a lot of scary, terrifying action to move forward on the becoming process. Been years and there's more years of work ahead of me, of course, because there's always another evolution to who you're called to become.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so many people are stuck looking backwards at what I was, my failures, everything, when God is really trying to like set your eyes forward and saying, like, what do you want in the future? It was exactly what you did, Stephanie, like writing down the list of who you are in the future. And I think that, and then starting declaring it and believing it. And, it's like neuroscience. It's like our body wants to keep us comfortable and it takes repetition and patterns to actually break that. Stephanie, I'm curious. I love that you wrote this out and then you started taking action and you talked about like your business and doing things differently there. Like, how did you continue that momentum? Because when you start and make a decision, that's great, but really it's in that consistency and the follow through that produces like even more of those results. So what did you do like on those days where it's just like, man, I want to throw in the towel? Like I have been, working out and I'm going to the gym, but I haven't lost the weight yet, or I haven't made any money in the business. How do you continue to encourage yourself to keep going in those moments?
So there's two pieces to this. Piece one is renewing your mind and minding your mind because your brain will always tell you to stop. It's it's a safety mechanism. It's back to the science, right? Your reticulating activating system or whatever that is in your brain where like whatever we speak is what our actual brain starts looking for in the world. And so it's minding your mind, renewing your mind. For me and my faith, that looks like getting in the scripture every day because that is what my truth is founded on and really being able to renew that. Like, what is truth around how I show up in the world? Work is glorifying. And so I'm going to show up and do the best work that I can by helping people, serving people, giving. and allowing like the money piece of that to work itself out. Cause everything is always full circle. Like, of course, if we're shepherding our gifts, there's going to be favor on that. But the other piece is this dedication to discipline. And for me, like, there is no end result here. And I think when we get that out of our minds as entrepreneurs, like, I'm not trying to get to this end result of like, I'm going to make 7 figures. I'm like, of course, sure, great. Like we have goals, but I'm going to work every day for the rest of my life on my callings. Period. Like I'm going to continue to show up in this work until, which means I'm just going to do my best. I'm going to be productive and busy in a way that is glorifying to God without leaning into hurry or rushing. And the best way we do that is we wake up and we say, what do I do today that is dedicated discipline towards the calling that I've written on the paper? And then we let go of outcome, because that's where we get completely taken out. Oh, I didn't hit X goal, or I'm not where this person is. But that's not your story. And whose outcome is that anyway? Like, even when I hit an outcome, there's another one. There's another one. We are all going to die with an unfinished book of possibility. So why not just show up today and do the best that we can? And that's kind of how I live my life. I'm like, today I'm showing up. Holy Spirit, what are we doing? I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to turn my work off at 4 and be with my family and know that that's who I'm called to be today. And tomorrow we'll do it again. And the coolest piece of that is it relinquishes pressure on something I can't control, which is an outcome. And knowing, like, the last piece of this, failure is going to be a part of that. And so we have to release our fear around failing as entrepreneurs. I've had a lot of failures. I've had, businesses obviously that failed. We've had hires that didn't work out. My technology's broken down in the middle of a summit, like whatever. We show up, we get up, we dust off, we learn, and we just grow through that and know that the next time you're going to be 1% better. That's the point of all of this.
That's amazing. Stephanie, I would love to hear, like, because some people listening are like, calling, what is this word? Like, do I have one? And what would be like the steps to discovering? Because I think like one thing you mentioned that was really interesting, and I feel like people can see this in their past too, which is like there were elements of that other thing you were doing that was like, oh, that was actually kind of a little clue to my calling, but it
Mhm.
was almost like the wrong territory or the wrong vehicle or it had a ceiling on it, right? So talk to that a little bit. Like, what's the steps to
Mhm.
discover our calling, and how much of that played into, like, I don't know if it's inventorying the past or inventorying what you already had, or yeah, just talk us through your process to really, you know, discovering that.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think first, if we can take this holistic view, there's, like I said, a lot of areas to the things you're called to do, right? For me, I've got basically 5 areas that I look at. We have business, I have family, I have personal, I have health, and then I don't remember the fifth one. So we have 5 things. And within all those fives, there's different callings. But when we're looking specifically at business, I have a framework that I teach. And what we really look at when we're thinking about business calling are vocational gifts. So, like, what are the things that you're good at, like speaking or writing, or I'm really good at being a teacher, like the things that you're good at them. That's what your vocational gifts typically are. Then we look at spiritual giftings in my framework, because faith is a big piece of it for me and my students. And that piece looks like, are you a leader? Are you somebody who is generous? Is that a gift that you have? Like, there's this other component of your spiritual giftings, the things that are inherent. And often we don't see these. There's lots of spiritual gifts tests that you guys can take to figure that piece out. And then the next thing we look at are our trials. So if you're looking particularly at business, and then you guys can do this in every area of your life, I recommend it. But particularly in business, what have you failed at the most, right? Because there's so many clues, like you said, Stephen, in if I was to look back and go, oh my gosh, my business crumbled. I wonder why I had to go through that. It was excruciating. What your mind would tell you and what you would perceive is like, well, I should never teach business. It failed. I'm going to be really bad at that. But the reality is that in order for you to fail at something, it now equips you to help other people who are going to go through that same thing. And because it's been redeemed and my business is now extremely successful, I can say, I know what it feels like for my business to fail. So look at your trials. Like, what have you been through? And people miss this because we don't want to feel it. It feels really bad to look at like what was hard in my life, what hurt me, who hurt me, what did not work, what has been the hardest stuff. Like, allow yourself to go there and to put that down. Now, the last piece are your triumphs. These are the wins in your life. What feels so great to you? What are the things that just bring you the most joy in your life? They're the things you're the most proud of. That's going to also give a lot of clues. So we look at these 4 areas and then we go through 4 steps. One is inventory. So what I actually have my students do is map those things out, and then we're going to inventory them all. Get everything out on a whiteboard or a mind map or whatever, because you got to see it all to be able to find the consistencies. The next step is to discover. So you're going to go through all the stuff and try to circle the things that have anything to do with each other. So like, for example, let's say that somebody says, okay, my vocational gifts are I love to teach. My spiritual gifts are preaching, just as an example, whatever that might be. And then my trials are that I hurt and sprained my legs as a runner. Like, I had all the pain in my feet. I couldn't figure out how to run, but I loved running. And my triumphs are I finally finished my first marathon last month. And they're looking, but they have all this other stuff. This is where we get so confused. But if they start circling the things that have anything to do with each other, and they finally realize, like, oh my gosh, like, I'm going to start a podcast teaching people how to run safely their first marathon or whatever that might be. And so it kind of gives you this toolkit, so to speak, to find and pull out across all these 4 areas. What's the niche, the pocket that I can start a business on? Because it's going to cross all 4 of those areas of your life. And then the last step is to define it. So you got to start with it. It's not going to feel clear. You're not going to have this big epiphany like, this is it. You're going to go, is this it? Like, are you like, you got to start somewhere, because that's going to give you the clarity. Clarity comes with time, refinement, doing. I'm sure you guys can attest, like, you didn't start with exactly what you're doing today. You started with something close and then it shifted a bit and you got more clear. Like, mine's been an evolution as well. And so you define it over time. And that's kind of how, in a nutshell, my process looks to kind of get that clarity on what the business will be that you will start.
Hey, Steven here. Sorry to interrupt your show, but I have an important ask for you. We love making our decisions off of data, and your opinion really matters. We would love to hear from you. Like, what do you want to hear on this show? Chelsea and I want to make this the most amazing experience for you. So what are the topics that you want to hear about? What are the guests that you want to hear on? What are the trainings you want us to go deep on? Like, we want to hear from you. So there's a number right here, 530-298-0747. Text the word podcast to 530-298-0747. You'll get a little autoresponder and it'll say, hey, what do you want to hear from us? And then text us back what you want to hear. We are watching those. We're taking a look at those. And so we would love to hear from you. And maybe your topic will end up on a show coming up soon. All right, back to the show. I love that. I think like we've done a lot of similar things in our relationship, and just like, I think that pattern recognition is so powerful. And I think we have 2 I think you have 2 boys too, right? We have 2 boys. Ours are like almost 2 and 4, but it's almost really interesting to look at people's childhoods, because oftentimes these callings things, the triumphs or the trials, will happen really early, I mean, I'm just thinking of your story, Chelsea. Like, Chelsea, we just did an episode on dyslexia, right? Like, that was a big hurdle for Chelsea. And then literally it was like the breakthrough our business needed was like her blogging every day, when the business before this business, and really overcoming that thing. And like, a lot of times you can look back at those, the trials, right? And see like, what was that thing actually kind of trying to prevent me from, and like, there's something in there, right? Or what was I going through? And it's like, sometimes it happens early. So I even just look at our kids and just like, what are the things that they struggle with? What are the things that they're drawn towards? And then what are the clues there? Like, it's like our kids are, I mean, the 4-year-old, he's like into dump trucks and things like that. But I'm always like, wow, he's an earth shaker. He's
Declare it over them now.
Right? He's a builder. Like, I'm like, what is the deeper thing there? I don't know, And maybe I'm reading into it too much, but I think people listening, if you look back at your childhood and kind of what you're into now, like, or what you're drawn towards, you're like, oh man, yeah, I did love art when I was a kid. And now I just really have this passion to like do art somehow, and there's something there.
Oh, always. And I think we can get stuck too, like to Chelsea's example, we get stuck with like, let's say she had done this exercise and said like, oh, like I ultimately am going to start this really hugely successful podcast. And we're going to coach all these moms on making money from the internet. Like that's not where you didn't have that vision. The vision was, I went through this trial. I'm going to blog about it. And then God equipped you to learn blogging and then equipped you to learn how to start a business and run a business and grow a business. And maybe other people can do this too. It was such an evolution. But if you hadn't started with the one clue that you were prepared to do, you would have missed the ultimate today outcome that you guys are sitting in. And I know that there's always another level of what you're equipped to do, but we have to be prepared for it. And the preparing comes through the doing. So anybody listening, we get frozen in fear and indecision. Like that's the worst thing you can do. Just move. It's going to be messy. I bet your first blog was pretty busted. Like my first podcast episode was so embarrassing. And it's like I had a YouTube, like it just, no one ever go look at my old stuff, right? Or maybe you should to be like, wow, if that shit can go from there to here, like anything is possible. So
Yeah.
we've got to move for those next doors to open. And I just love you shared that because it's a perfect example of that.
I think allowing yourself space to be the beginner, especially if you are going through Stefanie's exercise and figuring out like, what is my calling? What are those things that only I can do that I'm gifted in? Really digging into those trials. I love that. I also used to just like push away like the hard things. And now I've learned to like lean in, and those are opportunities of growth. But yeah, really being able to like dive in and create that consistency. John Maxwell says like consistency compounds. And I absolutely could not agree more. It's like those baby steps, that little action that produces those big results. You have to sow, in order to reap the harvest. And so many people just want to reap the harvest. They don't want to actually do the work and sow. And so I love that framework, Stefanie.
Stephanie, I have one last question for you. Do you have any like fun stories from your community of someone who came in, they're like totally not clear on their calling, and then you saw that click happen, and where are they at now?
Oh my gosh, yes. So I remember, she won't mind me using her name. She's a dear friend of mine now. So I have this friend, her name is Chelsea Jo. And we ended up she won a free coaching call with me. This was about 4 years ago now. I had started the podcast and people started asking like, do you coach? Do you coach? And I'm like, I don't know. Sure. Let's grab a coaching call. And so we would do like, it was like me and like I had an assistant, we're like figuring things out. It's super messy. So I get on the phone because like who does, like I didn't even do, it wasn't even on a Zoom. I'm like on a phone call, super weird. Anyways, I'm on a call with her and I'm like, tell me about like what you love. Tell me all these things. And she's like, I love organizing. I love creating systems. I want to create systems in people's lives and their businesses or not. She didn't say businesses yet. She said in their lives and their motherhood and their food and their meal planning and their marriage. And I said, oh yeah, like you're going to start the Systemize Your Life business. And she's like, I hate that. No one would ever listen to that, And I'm like, no, I feel it very clearly. Like that's what it should be called because you're telling me like there's all these systems in your life. And she was like, is systemize even a word? I'm like, I don't know, but that's your business. I wouldn't allow her to change it. So she starts this business and she hires me for coaching. So I'm coaching her on a one-on-one basis for a couple of years. I launch a program. She goes through my program. She starts a podcast. It's slow. It's not really growing very well. And and so she's kind of like, I'm getting a few free people in the Facebook group. And so she started from zero. She was an interpreter. She had 0 people. Some people start to get excited. They're like, hey, Chelsea, do you coach? And I'm like, yes, you coach. Tell them you coach. Let's set up a coaching business. So she starts meeting with some people and I say, let's build your course together. So we built her offer and she built a course teaching people how to systemize their home. And she starts making a few $1,000s a month. And then over time, it's now been 4 years for her. Today, where she sits is she has over 2 million downloads. She makes, $20,000 to $50,000 a month from her offers. She has 2 offers, a high ticket mastermind program. She has even learned and grown so much that she built a whole operational system that she implemented in my business that allowed me to become a 7-figure business. And it's like, won't he do it? Like from the day of planting the seed of like the question, for her to even ask the question, like, what am I called to do? I don't know what to create. To even ask that question opens possibility for where God's trying to take you. And for her to be open and coachable, which was, if I would say, why was she so successful? She did every single thing that I told her to do, and she stopped looking up. She was super consistent, to Chelsea's point, and she just said, "I am coachable." She didn't look up. She didn't get distracted, and she didn't, go, "Oh, I'm gonna go overnight success with this thing over here." She said, "I'm gonna do it the way that you're telling me." And today it's bigger and more fruitful than she ever dreamed.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
amazing.
So cool.
So cool, you guys. The power of that. I
So
love
if you're
that.
feeling this, I feel like you're listening to this show. I love that question you asked her. What do you love? Like, what is that thing? What's the thing? Like, sounds like that came very easy to her, but then you saw that you're like, that's gold. Like, that doesn't
Mhm.
come easy to everyone, including me sometimes, right? Like in my systems. And she ended up helping you, like in your systems.
Mhm.
Like, that is so cool. It's like, what's that superpower, that thing that is like fun, easy? I love that.
And it's the thing you think is not cool. So let's also, like, bonus pro tip right now. It's something you think is not cool. You're like, can't everybody do that? Because I'm like, I can speak and I can teach people to start podcasts. And like, I'm like, and they're like, but it's so hard, but I don't understand. I don't understand how to sell. I'm like, what do you mean you don't understand how to sell? You just sell the thing. Like, it's natural to me. So you got to ask yourself that question. Like, what is so natural to me that other people maybe ask me for? Like, hey, can you help me with this? Or that seem to be more difficult for others. That's going to be a huge clue, a huge indication, partnered with the other framework we went through to help you get closer.
Mhm.
Yeah. Wow. So good. I can just feel the breakthrough on the other side, people
Yeah.
listening to this. Stephanie, thanks for so much for being here. Where can people connect with you if they're interested in going deeper on your things? Like, where can people find you online?
Yeah, for sure. So stefaniegass.com is my website, and it's STEFANIEGASS. And I've got free workshops. I have a clarity workshop over there. If you want a deeper dive, it's free. How do I get clarity on this calling? I've got a podcast called Online Business for Christian Women. Anybody is welcome, though, whether you're Christian or a dude. We got all our dudes over there hanging out as well. And that's where you can find me every single week. I'll be there just pouring out content.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for being on the Rainmaker Family Show. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Rainmaker Family Show. If you're not a part of our mastermind yet, I want to say I think you're missing out. Our heart here at Rainmakers is to create total abundance for you. That's why we're offering a free one-on-one family freedom design session for you, our faithful listener.
Yeah, if you want to hop on a call with our team, see if it's a good fit to build a business that creates time freedom for you, financial abundance, and helps you leave that thriving family legacy. That's what we're all about in our mastermind. You can grab a time on our team's calendar at rainmakerfamily.com/mastermind. Again, that's rainmakerfamily.com/mastermind.